Would you pay $99 a month for a GLP-1 if you didn't know exactly what medication you were getting, where it came from, who prescribed it, or what happens if you have a problem? Probably not. But that's one of the challenges I discovered when I started researching the growing number of GLP-1 telehealth companies. There are now companies that are advertising GLP-1 treatments for $99, $149, $199, and $299 a month, and sometimes maybe more. And at first glance, it can look like you're simply comparing prices, but you're not necessarily comparing the same thing. Some companies offer FDA-approved medications. Some offer compounded medications. Some offer both. Some charge membership fees. Some include the medications in their advertised price, while others do not. And some of the language being used in this industry can be downright confusing. So I spent some time researching how GLP-1 telehealth companies work, what they're actually offering, what the pricing means, and some of the red flags that consumers should know about. Now, I do not personally use a GLP-1 telehealth company, and I am not recommending one in this video. That's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I know many people are using these services or they're considering them, and I wanted to understand this growing part of the GLP-1 market better. And what I found made me realize there are some questions you really should be asking before you sign up. So let's break it down. So how does GLP-1 telehealth actually work? One of the first things that I learned is that the telehealth company you see advertising online may not actually be the company making or dispensing your medication. Here's the basic process. You go to a telehealth website. You provide information about your health and medical history. A healthcare professional reviews that information. If appropriate, that provider can prescribe a medication. The prescription then goes to a pharmacy, and the pharmacy dispenses the medication. So there may actually be several different businesses involved in your treatment. And that's why I think one of the biggest mistakes that consumers can make is looking only at the name of the telehealth company. You need to look at the entire chain. Who is providing your medical care? What medication are they prescribing? And what pharmacy is filling that prescription? Those are three very different questions. Now, before we go any further, I want to make something clear. Telehealth isn't inherently bad. There are some real advantages here. If you live in an area where it's difficult to find a provider who treats obesity or prescribes GLP-1 medications, telehealth can make care much more accessible for you. You don't necessarily have to drive to an appointment. You may be able to complete your consultation from home, and some telehealth providers offer ongoing follow-up and monitoring. For some patients, that convenience can be a huge benefit. So I'm not making this video to tell you don't use telehealth. I am saying understand what kind of healthcare you're actually receiving through the telehealth company that you choose, because that's where the differences become important. The first question, what exactly are you getting? Don't just ask, do you offer GLP-1s? Ask, what specific medication will I receive? This is probably the most important thing I found in researching these companies. When a website says it offers GLP-1 treatment, that doesn't necessarily tell you what medication you'll receive. It could be an FDA-approved medication such as Wegovy or Zepbound, or it could be a compounded medication such as compounded semaglutide or compounded tirzepatide, and those are not the same thing. Let's talk about FDA-approved versus compounded. FDA-approved medications have gone through the FDA's drug approval process for their approved uses. Compounded drugs are different. The FDA does not approve compounded drugs in the same way it approves commercially manufactured medications. The agency does not review compounded drugs for safety, effectiveness, or quality before they are marketed. Now, I want to be very careful with this because there is a lot of misinformation on both sides of this issue. I am not saying that every compounded medication is dangerous. Compounding can have legitimate medical purposes when a patient's needs cannot be met by an FDA-approved medication. But a compounded medication isn't simply a generic version of Zepbound or Wegovy, and that is an important distinction. The FDA has specifically warned telehealth companies about marketing compounded GLP-1s in ways that suggest they are the same as FDA-approved medications. So if you're researching a company and you see language like the same as Zepbound or generic Zepbound or FDA-approved compounded medication, I would stop and investigate exactly what they're saying. Now let's talk about the thing that catches everyone's attention, the price. You might see $99 a month, while other companies are offering it for $149, $199, or $299 or more. It will be very easy to look at those numbers and decide, I'll take the cheapest one. We all love a good bargain. I love a good bargain. But here's the problem. You may not actually be comparing the same thing. For example, is the advertised price the medication, a membership, the medical consultation, follow-up care, lab work, shipping, or some combination of those things? Does the price stay the same when your dosage increases? That's important. Are there additional fees that are going to come up later on? And what medication does that price actually get you? So when a telehealth company is telling you $99 GLP-1 treatment right here, right now, don't immediately compare it with another company that's advertising it for $299 a month. First, you want to figure out what you're actually getting for that $99. It's a little like comparing two airline tickets based solely on the advertised fare without checking whether one includes a seat, a carry-on, checked luggage, and all of the other fees. The advertised price is not necessarily the total price. Question number 2, who is providing your medical care? Who is actually prescribing this medication? This is another question that I think consumers should be asking. Can you identify the healthcare provider? Is that provider licensed in your state? Is there an actual medical evaluation before you're prescribed medication? The FDA specifically identifies websites that don't require screening and a prescription from a licensed healthcare professional as a warning sign. And think about what you're being prescribed. This isn't a vitamin, it's a prescription medication. A proper evaluation should take into consideration your medical history, your current medications, your health conditions, and whether the treatment is appropriate for you. And you should know what happens after you receive the medication. Who do you call if something goes wrong? This may actually be one of the most important questions in this entire video. Imagine you've started your medication, you're experiencing significant side effects, or you have a question about your dose, or you aren't tolerating the medication. Who do you contact? Is there a healthcare professional available? How quickly can you reach them? Is follow-up included in the price? What happens if your medication needs to be adjusted? And what happens if you decide you want to stop treatment? These are questions that I would want answered before starting treatment, not after there's a problem. Because healthcare isn't just about getting the prescription, it's about what happens after the prescription. Question number 3, what pharmacy is filling your prescription? Where does my medication come from? This is one of the things I think consumers may overlook. The telehealth company isn't necessarily the pharmacy. So ask, what pharmacy fills my prescription? Can you identify the pharmacy? Where is it located? Can you verify that it is properly licensed? The FDA recommends obtaining prescriptions from a doctor and filling them at a state-licensed pharmacy. And if you're receiving a compounded medication, knowing who actually compounded it becomes even more important. You shouldn't have to hunt through a website to figure out where your medication comes from. Transparency matters. And you want to be very careful if you hear the words FDA-approved pharmacy. This is another thing that I found very interesting as I was researching all of this. You may see websites describing a pharmacy as an FDA-approved pharmacy, and that does sound reassuring. But according to the FDA, pharmacies and outsourcing facilities are not FDA-approved or FDA-licensed entities in the same way that medications are FDA-approved. So instead of relying on that phrase, find out what is the pharmacy's actual name? Where is it located? Is it appropriately licensed? Those are all meaningful questions that you should definitely be asking. And another issue, of course, is dosing. Something else that I found out while researching compounded GLP-1s is that the way the medication is dispensed can differ. FDA-approved products have standardized formulations and delivery systems. Some compounded injectable medications may be dispensed in multi-dose vials, which means the patient may have to measure out their own dose. And that introduces another opportunity for confusion. The FDA has received reports of dosing errors involving compounded semaglutide, including some cases that required hospitalization. Some of the reported errors involved confusion between milligrams, milliliters, and units. All of that is very confusing. That's why clear dosing instructions matter. If you're using a medication that requires you to measure your own dose, you should know exactly how that dose is measured and who to contact if you're confused. I'm raising a big red flag here for anything that says research peptides. That is one that really caught my attention. You may have heard of retatrutide. Who hasn't heard of that? There is a lot of excitement about it because it's an investigational medication that is being studied for obesity and other metabolic conditions. But there's a very important distinction that we need to look at here. Retatrutide is not FDA approved, not yet. It's still an investigational medication. So if you see a website offering retatrutide for sale outside of a legitimate clinical trial, that is something that I would be extremely cautious about. There is a big difference between this medication is being studied in clinical trials and you can buy this medication online today. Those are not the same thing. Okay, so let's look at the list of the biggest red flags. And this is a short list. I have 7 red flags for you. Number 1, no meaningful medical evaluation. If it feels like you're simply ordering a product online, stop and investigate. Number 2, you cannot identify the healthcare provider. You should know who is responsible for your medical care. Number 3, you can't identify the pharmacy. You should know where your medication comes from. Number 4, claims that compounded medication is the same as an FDA-approved drug. The FDA has specifically taken action against companies over this type of marketing. Number 5, FDA-approved pharmacy. This isn't an FDA approval designation for pharmacies. It does not exist. Number 6, extremely low prices without clear explanations. That is definitely a red flag. A low price isn't automatically a problem, but you should understand exactly what you're getting for that price. And number 7, unapproved medications or research peptides. If a website is selling something like retatrutide outside a legitimate clinical trial, I would walk away. So which telehealth companies are actually reputable? Now, this is probably the question you're wondering about, and I'm going to give you an answer that may be a little different than what you expected. I don't think the responsible approach here is for me to simply give you a list of companies and say these are good and those are bad. Why? Because the industry is changing incredibly quickly. Prices change, medication availability changes, pharmacy relationships change, Companies change their business models, and regulations are changing too. So rather than giving you a permanent list of best companies, I think it's more useful to show you how to evaluate them yourself. Let's take a look at the GLP-1 Telehealth Scorecard. When researching a company, you want to look at these 7 things. Number 1, medical oversight. Can you identify the provider? Is there a meaningful medical evaluation? Is there ongoing follow-up? Number 2, medication. What specific medication are they prescribing? Is it FDA approved or is it compounded? Number 3, the pharmacy. Who actually fills those prescriptions? Can you verify the pharmacy? Number 4, pricing. What is the total cost, not just the advertised starting price? Number 5, transparency. Can you easily find answers to these questions, or do you have to dig through the entire website looking for them? Number 6, safety and follow-up. Who do you contact if you experience side effects? What happens if the treatment isn't working? Number 7, marketing. Does the company make claims that sound too good to be true? Are they suggesting a compounded drug is identical to an FDA-approved product? Are they promoting unapproved medications? Those 7 things tell you much more than a company's Instagram ad. And here is my 10-question checklist. And if you are considering a GLP-1 telehealth company, these 10 questions are ones that I would want answered before you sign up. Number 1, what specific medication will I receive? Number 2, is it FDA approved or is it compounded? Number 3, who is prescribing it? Number 4, is that provider licensed in my state? Number 5, what pharmacy is filling the prescription? Number 6, can I verify that pharmacy? Number 7, what is my total cost? Number 8, what does that price include? Number 9, who should I contact if I have a problem or side effects? And number 10, what happens if I want to stop treatment or transfer my care? If you can't get clear answers to these questions, I would pause before signing up. After researching all of this, I think the biggest takeaway is actually pretty simple. Don't choose a GLP-1 telehealth company based solely on the advertised price. You're not simply comparing prices, you're comparing medications, medical providers, pharmacies, and levels of care. A $99 advertisement does not tell you whether that's actually a better deal than a $299 program. And a $299 program isn't automatically better just because it costs more. You need to know exactly what you're getting and who's providing it. And that's really why I made this video. I am not using a GLP-1 telehealth company, and I am not recommending one to you. I'm not telling you that you should or shouldn't use telehealth. I simply wanted to understand this growing part of the GLP-1 market better and share what I found with you. Because there are so many people that are considering these medications, and if you're going to make a decision like that about your health, I think you deserve to understand what you're actually being offered. So if you know someone who is considering getting a GLP-1 through telehealth, send them this video. Okay, so there is another reason that I started researching these telehealth companies. Once you hit the 1,000 subscriber mark on YouTube, you start getting all kinds of offers for partnerships. And the telehealth companies started coming out of the woodwork. So I knew I needed to come up with a list of questions so that I could properly vet them and find out whether or not they were legitimate. And when I started asking them those questions, they started disappearing. So what does that tell you? They're reaching out to me, asking me to push their product to people that watch my videos. But they don't want me to ask questions about their legitimacy, their safety, and what it is they're exactly selling to people. So that was a huge red flag for me, and I knew I wanted to learn more about these companies and how they worked after that. So I knew whether or not ever partnering with one of them would be a good move. And I'm not saying I never would do it, but I am saying that if I decide to do it, it's going to be a legitimate company that I know does everything the right way and ensures the safety of the patients. Have you personally used one of these telehealth services? I would love to hear about your experience. What company did you use? Did you know which medication you were receiving? Did you know which pharmacy filled it? Was the pricing transparent? And did you have access to healthcare professionals when you needed one? Your experience might help someone else make a more informed decision. And as always, this video is for informational purposes only, and it is not medical advice. You want to talk with your own healthcare provider about whether a particular medication or treatment approach is appropriate for you. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you in the next video.